Hello and welcome back to my tips on Starch applique. Today I'm going to show how I go about turning a circle. For turning circles, I love to use the Cut Right heavy duty freezer paper as I do for all of my applique shapes. I find that this is a cardstock paperweight, and so your fabric edges turn really very easily over the thickness of the paper. The paper doesn't crumble in the edges, keeps a nice firm shape, and you can reuse a template many times to create many more shapes. So that being said, I have gone ahead and cut out my circles that I'm going to use today. My favorite way to cut circles is by using a paper punch. I've collected a lot of different sizes, and I find having them in my arsenal if you're going to be an applicator is a great tool to include. Many times you can find them on sale at places like Hobby Lobby for 40% off. You find them back in the paper crafting aisle. Joann Fabrics also has them, and of course we can find them off online from one of our favorite sources very easily as well. I use my scrap instead of using a full new sheet of paper when I'm ready to cut some shapes. This is where I use my scraps. When I print a pattern, I usually print on the computer. And so I will find that I have lots of scraps around the edges or maybe in between different places here. I always save all those little bits and pieces. And then when I'm doing some small circles, I can use all of those little shapes up very easily. So today I have sprayed my spray starch. I've gone ahead and put some in my little bowl that I'm going to use with my paintbrush to starch the edges of my fabric. And again, this is my favorite one to use for my starch applique. The best press that many people use is not really a firm enough and hard enough, firm enough, I guess you would say, finish. So I think that the Faultless brand is probably the easiest to purchase. I simply purchase it at my local grocery store. It's found in the laundry aisle. There are different color cans. I kind of like this gold one for doing this. It's a little bit more expensive than the blue cap, but a can of this is going to last you for a very long time unless you do really lots of applique. So as I get ready to do my first shape here, I'm going to first of all dip my paintbrush, and I try to get rid of some excess. I don't need it over wet, but I want it plenty wet. When you see, as I paint the starch onto my fabric, I am not going over my paper. And I try to keep my paintbrush, if you can see this, away from the edge of the paper. We all know what happens to paper when it gets wet. And I said that you can reuse these shapes many times, but if I get that edge really wet, it's going to, as paper does, get soggy, and then I will not be able to use that many times. I'm going to start, this is what I call the sweet spot of my iron. And this is usually what I use to press all of my shapes. The circle is my one exception, and I am going to start with the point of the iron, and I'm going to show you why. You have to start somewhere. There's no end to a circle. And so if I start with my point, I can keep this edge over here up out of the way from getting a big crease in it and getting a fold in it. So I get that started. I'm going to quickly, I use this hand. I do not like to use this a stiletto or something in my other hand. I find that I do better with my hand. If you're afraid of burning yourself or have very sensitive fingers, you may want to use one. Again, I can do lots better with just my hand. But after I get that, I'm going to switch to, whoops, get squared back around. Switch to your sweet spot right away. And so I'm going to take, and I am only concerned with sweeping, I'm kind of sweeping and I can feel the edge of my paper, and I am only concerned with this edge. Notice all of my ruffles. We'll tend to those in a second. Right now, I'm just worried about getting my edge, because on the edge, I want no folds. I want it nice and smooth so that I'm not getting any crinkles, creases, folds, whatever we want to call them, out there on that edge. The other thing that I like to do is once I set this iron down on my ironing surface, I like to just keep going. You noticed in the beginning, I starched the whole thing, because you're going to go fast enough that that starch isn't going to dry out. Look, I'm back around to the beginning already. I do have lots of ruffles. Turn it over, check it out. You're looking at this outer edge and you want a nice, smooth finish. Got a little rattling all the way around. Once you have determined that there's no crinkles out there on that outer edge, then I can turn this back down, and I'm going to take my iron, and I'm going to do it carefully because I didn't have a crease in it, so now I certainly don't want to get one now. But can you notice how I'm sliding my iron over there? I'm going to squish it down. I'm flattening it down. So I'm getting those little ruffled edges where they had to ease in all inside. Notice how flat it is. If there's a crinkle in there, it doesn't matter. We just don't want the crinkle on the outside edge. So what do you think of my flower? Once I determine that it looks really good to me, then I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to pull my template out. I can reuse this, so I'm going to lay it aside. It gets a little messed up. I like to press it from the good side, so I lay it down real carefully, get all those edges, and I give it a final little press. Let the heat of your iron do its work. If you move it too fast, it's not going to be able to heat anything up. Again, looking at my outer edge, nice and flat, nice and smooth. I call that a great circle. Again, starch this outer side, keeping your starch away from the edge of the paper. You will know if you don't get enough starch on because it won't stay. If you get too much starch on, you're really going to sizzle when you hit the iron to it. And so after a couple, like too much of, and then not enough, you will get the happy medium of how much to put on. So it just comes with trial and error. Let's say that I get, well, I didn't do a very good job. I'm trying to get a crinkle in there. Let's say I got this crinkle, and you can see this, well, maybe it's right there. You can see that little bump that I got there because I got a really big crease and it's coming clear up there to the top. Just pull it back, take your finger, kind of work it out. And if you need to hit it again with a little bit of wetness, usually just your damp paintbrush will get it out. And then you can just keep on going on your merry way all the way around. Again, notice how I'm using this part of my iron, a sweeping motion, because I feel the edge of the paper, and so I know I'm going over there. I'm not worried about getting that to lay down right now. I'm only worried about trying to get a nice crease around my circle. Then when I'm happy, I'm going to come and I'm going to get my iron sat down on it, let the heat do its work. lift it up. It should be nice and flat. I'm going to look again to make sure I didn't mess anything up and get any crinkles in. And so again, I got a nice little flower. Pull the template paper out, kind of fix my little flower or my little circle. Give it a nice press again. Set it aside until I'm ready to get them attached to my background or over top of whatever, you know, maybe it's the center of another flower or whatever. I hope this has helped you to learn how to do flowers. By the way, let me add one thing. I really don't like to do circles that's smaller than 1 inch, 3/4 inch at the most or the least. Anything smaller, like little tiny berries, just really are toughies, and just there's just too much fabric to and not enough surface to go around to get that all in there. So I don't even really try. You know, this is where I think we can take, you know, some patterns are made for fusible applique and things like that, where you're not like trying to turn the edges. And so this is where we learn to adapt a pattern and be creative. And maybe we will do another method to try to attach those berries. Or simply sometimes I will make bigger berries than what the pattern designer made. And then I use probably less of them than what the designer used. So that's some, you know, way that we can handle whenever we see something that has a lot of little tiny berries in it. So anyway, I hope this has helped you, and if I have given you any little tips along the way that you think will be useful to you, please leave me a comment, and till next time, happy appliquing. Bye-bye.